Solent was one of the first parts of the country to be designated as a free port, and that's expected to create 50,000 jobs, which is incredibly exciting. And that's across all parts of the sector, looking at how we can accelerate what's already a really strong maritime centre. You've also got the UK's largest scale shore power installation occurring to support the new cruise terminal that's being developed here at Southampton. From the Port of Portsmouth, we've got a hybrid ferry operated by Whitelink going over to the Isle of Wight, which is helping show how we can use these green technologies and show others around the country how they should work too. You've also got some really exciting innovation happening, not just on vessels and ports. We've got in the Solent a new innovation centre funded by the LEP to explore the breakdown of plastics so they can be reused and prevent their pollution. And clearly plastics in the sea is one of the biggest scourges for our time in terms of man's impact on the environment. And at Portsmouth, you've got a brand new extended cruise berth taking the biggest ships across the world and an accompanying new cruise terminal. And that means that this part of the country is a real, true leader in cruise for the UK. Maritime in the southwest adds 3.8 billion to the economy, supports around 25,000 jobs, so it's a really significant driver, perhaps obviously for a region that has the sea on two sides. The southwest. It's also a real centre for innovation, where we're looking at things like automation and geospatial data. You've got a big defence footprint there too, and you've got some of the most renowned boat builders and super yacht manufacturers in the region. Princess employing thousands of people in Plymouth, for instance. You've also got the world's first seagoing passenger ferry, which is powered by batteries, launched out of Plymouth last year. Plymouth and the surrounding area was designated as a free port, and that's a particular focus on marine technology and ocean science. Floating offshore wind is also a big opportunity, but importantly, something where there's significant activity already. You've now got 5 projects up and running in the Celtic Sea, and you've got the Floating Offshore Wind Accelerator to really accelerate the activity and develop the technologies that are required to unlock the potential from generating offshore wind but floating at sea as opposed to being fixed to the seabed. So that's really exciting. You've also got Plymouth designated as the UK's first national marine park, and that's fusing our role as a sector in celebrating and accessing the water, preserving marine life, and also understanding how we can better find the solutions to export those services and those expertise that are developed in places like Plymouth to the rest of the world. So Maritime is very significant for the Liverpool City region. Around 50,000 people's jobs are supported by the sector, and it adds £4 billion to the economy, so massive. And that's no surprise when you think that 45% of trade between the UK and the US that travels across the ocean goes through Liverpool. And not only is it about trade, you've also got cruise booming in Liverpool, and you've got really impressive advanced manufacturing in terms of shipbuilding in particular that's happening. The RSS David Attenborough that was built at Camel Laird and servicing the Antarctic and elsewhere is based on what's been able to be done in Liverpool and at Camel Laird in particular. So Mersey Maritime are spearheading a really exciting and transformational project in the form of the Maritime Knowledge Hub. Some £23 million of project that will help provide a collaborative space for SMEs and others working with manufacturers, innovators, universities to create the solutions that we need for the sustainability of the sector, but also other challenges around digitization and efficiency. And that's a really important project that is being developed and borne out in the region. HyNet Northwest is a fantastic project in the region that is developing blue and green hydrogen that will play a role in not only decarbonising, which is one of the most polluting clusters of industrial activity in the UK, but also has a read across to maritime decarbonisation, and it's right that Mersey Maritime and others are right at the heart of that project. Scotland is a true global powerhouse in the maritime sector. Perhaps that's not surprising given the 7,000 miles of coastline. No one in Scotland is more than 50 miles away from the sea, and that's inspired people through the ages to engage with the sea and use it to develop their livelihoods and the proposition that Scotland offers. And that proposition includes some of the world's most significant ship management companies. It's the largest ship management cluster we have in the UK. We have a large professional services cluster beyond that too. We have shipbuilding happening on the Clyde and at Rosyth for the Royal Navy. You've got a huge offshore support industry, oil and gas originally, but increasingly transitioning to greener and more sustainable types of energy development. And you've got training colleges and universities that are at the cutting edge of not only what modern skills training looks like, but what innovation needs to look like, and that bridge between industry and academia. And some of the most exciting innovation is happening in Scotland today. We've seen quite a lot of investment by ports, making sure that they can capitalise on the offshore developing market that you have. An example of that, Aberdeen Harbour is investing £350 million to capitalise on offshore renewables. To Port of Cromarty Firth, £50 million, and that's repeated around the coast to make sure that the Scottish maritime sector is there to benefit from that work that is due to come as we move to a greener future. You've also got the Type 26 being built by BAE, and you've got Babcock working with the University of Strathclyde on some really exciting new partnerships around innovation, and that at Strathclyde is further boosted by the establishment of Maritime Research and Innovation UK, which is the UK's collaborative flagship research and innovation body for maritime, and that's happening in Scotland, but it brings the rest of the sector together. There's a lot of focus on hydrogen across the sector around the world, but there's some really important steps being taken in Orkney and across Scotland with the High Seas 3 consortium that is taking a practical application of that technology and looking at what that means in terms of ferries and getting it into use, because it's incredibly important that we make the progress we need to sooner rather than later. Something we're all committed to doing. Humber is a really significant region in the UK. I think just under a quarter of all maritime trade that comes into England goes through those Humber ports. But it's not just about trade, it's also about ports and other parts of the sector hosting other industries, and that is why the region has been positioned as the UK's energy estuary, particularly servicing those offshore wind developments. Around 35,000 jobs in the region are dependent on maritime, and it makes a significant contribution to the economy, creating jobs throughout the rest of the supply chain. So there's some really exciting projects in the Humber, and one of those is Greenport Hull. It's a partnership between ABP and Siemens to make sure that as much of the value as possible from offshore wind is occurring in our coastal areas, and that is a £310 million investment for turbine manufacturing, testing, assembly and operations. So that's a massive project. And the South Humber Bank project, which is a £42 million investment with Able Marine, is about how we can ensure the port has the infrastructure needed to service that offshore wind market. So another significant investment there. The Humber was one of the first free ports to be announced by the Chancellor, and the Humber free port is focused on decarbonisation, and it's striking that around a quarter of all energy produced in the UK is produced within that Humber estuary. So it's really significant, and the free port is designed to accelerate that and ensure we pave the way to that greener future. And we've got the development of the Hornsey 2 offshore wind project next to Hornsey 1, the world's largest offshore wind project, and we want to see that creating jobs in manufacturing, operations and maintenance and other servicing from Humber, and that's very much at the heart of the free port bid. Well, Freeport East was one of the first free ports to be announced by the Chancellor as his flagship economic strategy for how we grow the economies in coastal areas, and Freeport East has a particular focus on hydrogen, how we link the decarbonisation of our economy with coastal development. It's a really important one for this part of the country, and the free port that was being successful in its bid is due to create 13,500 jobs, unlock in the short term £500 million of investment, due to create a total impact of £5.5 billion, which is clearly the most significant infrastructure and economic development announcement and package for the East Coast that we've seen in a very long time. Well, maritime is big business in East Anglia. You've got a huge coastline, and that creates lots of opportunities, and you've got the Broads National Park as well, where you've got boat builders and people getting on the water and enjoying the recreational health benefits of that, and you've got some world-class boat builders, International Boat Building College at Alton Broad. You've got a huge shoreside support infrastructure for offshore wind that's really growing, places like Yarmouth and Lowestoft playing a big role there. And you've got Felixstowe, the UK's largest container port, clearly a massive driver of economic growth. And you've got offshore engineering firms, and in particular, you've got world-class marine science at Lowestoft in the former CFAS, that new state-of-the-art facility, which is generally world-leading. Clearly, with the Prime Minister's ambition on offshore wind, this region stands to benefit significantly, but it needs to develop that properly and capitalise on the opportunities that we see there. There's opportunities around shipbuilding for the East Coast, servicing those offshore wind farms in particular, and there's also some really interesting work around how we digitise what's happening in some of our ports, and I know a lot of colleagues around the East Coast are looking at how we bring some of the digitisation technologies and processes to make the movement of freight even more efficient, and that's something that it's great to see this part of the country leading on. In the southeast, 2 million people, which is half of the total people in that region, live in coastal towns and cities. So it's a really important sector. How we grow maritime is going to be really important to the future prosperity of the region. And it's a region that encompasses all parts of the maritime sector. You've got lots of people in leisure marine who are enjoying inland waterways and enjoying the coastal areas. You've also got major ports. You've got ports of the Thames, and you've got Dover, clearly a massively important trade route to the continent in particular. And you've got really exciting developments across all parts of those. The South East has two of the first wave of free ports that the Chancellor has announced, and they're going to create thousands of jobs across the region. If you look at Freeport East, they're forecasting 13,500 new jobs, and the Thames Freeport 25,000. So a really significant development for the region.